Now, for more perspective about the humanitarian crisis, United Nations correspondent Lenka White is now joining us live from New York. Thanks so much for joining us, Lenka. Let's begin by talking about the humanitarian crisis unfolding in Europe. More than 1 million people have fled with warnings of more. What kind of future lies ahead for them? In fact, we're getting reports now, and I want to read them out for you. At least 351 civilians are now confirmed to have been killed in Ukraine since Russia began its invasion. Tell us more.
So thank you very much for having me. This situation is, of course, extremely bad. And I can say that here in New York and in the United Nations, people are trying hard to focus on what's going on and to condemn Russia, but also to actually create some kind of humanitarian support to everyone what is needed. So the UN is actually going to have a humanitarian session this Monday. And France with Norway are trying to pass a resolution which would condemn Russia, but also which would provide a humanitarian aid to all these people in Ukraine.
Right. Now, the United Nations General Assembly recently overwhelmingly voted to reprimand Russia for invading Ukraine and demanded that Moscow stop the attacks. A few days on, my question is, has this vote done anything to deter Russia?
This is a really great question, and it's often a question of people, inside the UN and outside. What's actually the result of all these resolution and votes? And as you probably know, the General Assembly is not legally binding by itself. It's only the Security Council, so it's really under question actually what's going to be the impact. But what I can say is that it's definitely showing the world support for something. It's definitely showing sort of courage and condemning the nation. And I think it creates a big pressure. So I believe the result will be a pressure, maybe sort of mobilization of the world's community and showing actually where everyone is standing.
Lenka, let's talk about now President Putin's latest words. He says that Western sanctions on Russia are akin to a declaration of war. How are these comments being perceived?
Of course, it can be understood two ways, right? Russia will understand it differently, and Europe, US will also understand differently. It's probably destroying Russia's economy. Many companies are leaving. I believe so far it's hard to assess to what extent the impact is going to be, but the markets are shaking. So here in New York, it's, we don't talk that much about the sanctions, to be honest. It's more like what can the UN be doing? And the UN cannot really impose any sanctions because Russia will not approve them as the Security Council member. But of course, like the US and EU, they do not want to go to war with Russia in Ukraine. It could create a third world war. So what they can actually do, right? They can probably impose sanctions, but there are not that many ways. So I believe that Vladimir Putin probably perceives this as a strong attack on his nation.
Right. Just to follow up to that, my final question, talking about these sweeping sanctions imposed by the West on Russia, will they work to deter Russian aggression? Is the US at all worried about the impact on energy markets?
I believe the US is worried. The financial market is shaking. Investors are worried, especially the ones who have investments in Russia, and it's sort of shaking everything up. But I have been also reading news that the US wants to cut off Russian supplies. And as you know, US is a big supplier of oil itself. So it could even create new opportunities for the United States to actually sell its own oil. And for example, the Nord Stream 2 was, as of this moment, it's been abolished, it's been sort of ceased, and it's not going to work. And some are saying this was the goal of the United States to actually achieve this, to be able to sell more of its oil. So I think there are going to be many developments on the economic side, and it could create even opportunities for the United States.
Lenka, thank you so much for all those insights, and thanks for joining us on WION World is One at this hour.
Thank you.
WION World is One is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.